My daughter said I needed a guardian. Then the court read her text messages. My daughter Melissa stood in court and told the judge I could no longer make safe decisions for myself. She said I forgot bills, missed appointments, and needed someone else to control my home and finances. Then she looked at me with tears in her eyes, as if she were saving me. But my attorney had brought printed text messages Melissa never expected anyone else to read. In them, she told her brother that once the guardianship was approved, she could finally get Mom out of that house and stop me from changing my will. The courtroom went quiet. Because the question was no longer whether I needed help. It was whether my own daughter had tried to use concern as a weapon against me. Subscribe for more stories about dignity and lawful justice, and tell me, should relatives have to show proof before asking for guardianship? My name is Rebecca Clark. I was 68 years old when my daughter tried to convince a court that I no longer had the right to make decisions about my own life. For 34 years, I had lived in the white brick house on Willow Street that my husband William and I bought when our children were small. It was not a grand house. It had a narrow front porch, a maple tree that leaned a little too far toward the driveway, and a kitchen window over the sink where I could see the bird feeder William built before his hands began to shake. But it was mine. William and I paid for it one careful month at a time. He worked maintenance at the county school district. I spent most of my life as an assistant at the Willow Creek Community Library. We did not have expensive vacations or a new car every few years. We had a blue Buick until it could no longer pass inspection. We packed our lunches. We repaired things before replacing them. And when our mortgage was finally paid off, William stood in the kitchen, holding the final statement in both hands. "We did it, Becky," he said. I still kept that statement in a fireproof box in my closet. After William passed away, the house became quieter than I expected. Grief has a way of changing the shape of familiar rooms. For months, I would set out 2 coffee mugs in the morning before realizing there was no one across from me to drink the second cup. But slowly, I learned how to live in the quiet. I joined the Tuesday reading circle at the library. I planted tomatoes behind the garage. I began taking short walks again after dinner. I handled my bills at the dining room table every first Saturday of the month, exactly the way William and I had done together. I was not pretending that aging had made life effortless. My knees hurt in the rain. I wrote appointments on a calendar because I liked seeing them in front of me. I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Hanley, to help me change the high ceiling light in the hallway because I had enough sense not to climb a ladder alone. But needing help sometimes was not the same as being unable to live. Melissa did not see it that way. Or maybe she saw it perfectly well and chose to call it something else. My daughter had always been forceful. Even as a little girl, she had entered a room as though it belonged to her. When she was 12, she reorganized my kitchen cabinets without asking. When she was 16, she told William that his old recliner made the living room look depressing. As an adult, she became very good at sounding concerned while telling people what to do. For many years, I mistook that confidence for strength. I thought Melissa only wanted the best for everyone. The first time she suggested I should not live alone was 6 months after William's funeral. She came over with takeout containers and a folder tucked under her arm. She placed the food on the counter, then looked around the kitchen as if she were inspecting a place she might buy. "Mom, have you thought about what happens if something goes wrong?" she asked. I was rinsing a plate. Something always goes wrong eventually. That is what insurance is for. She gave me the patient smile she had started using with me more often. "I'm serious. What if you fall? What if you get confused? What if you forget to pay something important?" "I have not forgotten to pay anything important. You missed your dentist appointment last month. The dentist's office changed the date and left the message on the wrong number." Melissa folded her arms. "You shouldn't have to prove you're fine all the time." I turned off the faucet and dried my hands slowly. "And I shouldn't have to defend being fine." She laughed then, but it was a short laugh, not warm, not amused. You know what I mean. I did know what she meant. I simply did not yet understand how far she was willing to take it. After that, her concern began appearing everywhere. She called every other day to ask whether I had taken my medication. She asked why I was still driving to the grocery store instead of ordering delivery. She wanted to know who I spoke to at church, what I spent at the pharmacy, and whether I had remembered to lock the side door. At first, I tried to be patient. She was my daughter. She had lost her father too. But concern has a sound when it is sincere. It asks. It listens. It offers. Melissa's concern did not do any of those things. It corrected. It interrupted. It kept a quiet count of every ordinary mistake until she could arrange them into a story about me. One afternoon, I found her standing in my home office with the top drawer of my desk open. "What are you looking for?" I asked. She turned quickly. "Nothing. I was trying to find your address book." "My address book is in the kitchen." "Oh," she closed the drawer. I must have forgotten. The drawer held my insurance papers, my bank statements, and the folder containing William's will. I stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at her hand resting on the drawer handle. Then she smiled. "You really should keep important papers somewhere safer, Mom." I said nothing until she left. That night, I moved the fireproof box from my closet to the locked cabinet inside my bedroom. I changed the code on the small safe where I kept my passport, the deed to the house, and the documents my attorney had prepared after William died. I felt guilty while I did it. That was the part no one tells you about betrayal. Before you feel angry, you often feel ashamed for becoming suspicious of someone you raised. A few weeks later, Melissa arrived with her younger brother, Daniel. Daniel lived across town with his wife and 2 boys. Unlike Melissa, he had always been the quiet one. He worked long hours in sales and called when he could. Since William's death, he had come by less often than I wished, but I understood life had a way of pulling people in many directions. That day, however, he would not meet my eyes. Melissa sat at my dining room table and laid a stack of papers in front of me. "We want to talk about a plan," she said. I looked at Daniel. "What kind of plan?" "A family plan," Melissa answered. "Something that makes things easier for everyone." I did not realize things were difficult for everyone. Daniel shifted in his chair. "Mom, no one's trying to upset you." That sentence usually means someone is about to. Melissa sighed. "There you go again." "Go where?" "Getting defensive." I looked at the papers. There was a brochure for an assisted living community called Maple Glen. There was a list of estate planning services. There was also a pamphlet from the probate court about guardianship. My hands became very still. "Why is this here?" I asked. Melissa leaned forward. "Because Dad is gone and you're alone. You need someone who can step in if you stop being able to manage things." "I already have a durable power of attorney for emergencies," I said. "Mr. Hastings prepared it years ago. It only becomes active if I am determined, unable to make my own decisions." "That's not enough," Melissa said. "A guardianship would make things cleaner." "Cleaner for whom?" She glanced at Daniel before answering. "For the family." I picked up the court pamphlet. On the front was a photograph of an older man smiling beside a younger woman. The words were simple enough, but the meaning beneath them was not. A guardian could make decisions about housing, finances, medical care, and personal property. A guardian could decide whether I stayed in my home. A guardian could control the money William and I had saved. I placed the pamphlet back on the table. "I am not signing anything today." Melissa's face tightened. "No one asked you to sign anything. You brought papers about taking control of my life into my home. I think that counts as asking." Daniel cleared his throat. "Melissa is just worried." I turned to him. "Are you worried, Daniel?" He hesitated too long. "I think we should make sure you're protected." "Protected from what?" Neither of them answered. Melissa gathered the papers with quick, irritated movements. "Fine," she said, "but don't act surprised when something happens and we're left trying to clean it up." After they left, I stood alone in the dining room with the afternoon light falling across William's old oak table. For the first time, I felt something I had not felt since he died. Not grief. Fear. Not the kind that comes from weakness. The kind that comes when you realize someone has been studying the locks on your door. The following Monday, I called my attorney. Martin Hastings had handled our will, our home title, and the small trust William and I created for our grandchildren's education. He was a gentle man with silver hair and a habit of taking off his glasses before saying something important. When I told him about the pamphlet, he did not interrupt me. When I finished, he asked only one question. "Rebecca, Has Melissa asked you for access to your accounts or legal documents? She has asked questions. She has looked through things when she thought I was not watching. And have you noticed any changes in your mail, banking, medications, or appointments? I thought about it. 2 months earlier, my bank had called to confirm a transfer request I had not made. The woman on the phone told me someone had asked about adding a second person to my checking account. I had assumed it was a misunderstanding. Then there was the canceled physical therapy appointment after my knee flare-up. Melissa had told me she rescheduled it because I sounded tired. The clinic later said someone identifying herself as my daughter had called to cancel, but no new date had been set. I told Mr. Hastings everything. He took his glasses off. I would like you to do 3 things, he said. First, change the passwords on your financial accounts and email. Second, ask bank for a copy of any recent account inquiries or change requests. Third, do not confront Melissa until we understand what she has done or attempted to do. Do you think she has done something? I think you are right to be careful. That was not an answer, but it was enough. The next day, I went to the bank. The branch manager, a woman named Carla Ruiz, knew me from years of deposits and mortgage payments. She greeted me kindly, then became serious when I explained why I had come. I can print recent activity and account maintenance notes, she said. But if there is anything suspicious, we may need to involve our fraud department. I am not trying to make trouble for my daughter, I said. Carla looked at me steadily. Mrs. Clark, asking questions about your own money is not making trouble. Those words settled something inside me. I watched as she printed the records. There were no missing withdrawals, no large transfers, but there were notes. One from 2 months earlier, when someone had called asking whether I had a safe deposit box. One from the previous month, asking what paperwork would be needed to establish guardianship access to an existing account. And one from just 9 days before. Caller identified herself as Melissa Clark, daughter. Requested confirmation of account balances for court planning. Request denied. No authorization on file. My throat tightened. Can she get those details? I asked. Not without your permission or a legal order, Carla said, and she did not receive them. I thanked her, folded the pages carefully, and put them in my purse. When I arrived home, I found Melissa's car in my driveway. She was sitting on my porch with her arms crossed. I've been calling you, she said. My phone was in my purse. You changed your bank password. I stopped halfway up the walk. How do you know that? Her expression changed for only a second. It was small, but I saw it. Then she stood. Because I tried to help you reset your online banking last month. Remember? I remember you offering. I do not remember giving you my password. You're making this into something ugly. No, I said quietly. I think someone else may be doing that. Melissa stared at me. The porch was very quiet. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower started. My maple leaves moved in the warm wind. Then she lowered her voice. You need to stop listening to people who want to turn you against your family. I am listening to my own instincts. Your instincts have not been very reliable lately. That sentence hurt more than I wanted it to. Maybe she saw it in my face, because she softened her tone. Mom, I'm trying to help. Daniel agrees. We both think you need more support. Daniel agrees with what? With the truth. And what truth is that? That you are slipping. I looked at my daughter. The little girl whose school lunches I had packed. The woman whose college tuition William and I had paid even when money was tight. And I understood something cold and clear. Melissa did not need me to be confused. She needed other people to believe I was. I want you to leave, I told her. She blinked. Excuse me? I want you to leave my property. Her mouth opened, then closed. You can't shut me out. I can ask you to respect a boundary. You are proving my point right now. No, I said. I am proving I heard you. She left without saying goodbye. 2 weeks passed. I did everything Mr. Hastings advised. I changed every password. I placed alerts on my bank accounts. I spoke to my doctor, Dr. Patel, and asked that no one receive information about my health without my written permission. I gave my neighbor Mrs. Hanley a spare key and asked her to call me directly if she ever saw anything unusual around my house. For a little while, nothing happened. Then on a Thursday morning, a deputy from the county probate court knocked on my door. He was polite, almost apologetic. Mrs. Rebecca Clark, he asked. Yes, he handed me an envelope. You have been served with a petition for guardianship. There will be a preliminary hearing next month. My fingers went numb around the papers. The petition said Melissa believed I was unable to manage my finances, medical care, and living arrangements. It claimed I had forgotten to pay utility bills. It claimed I had missed multiple medical appointments. It claimed I had become suspicious and hostile toward my children. And near the bottom of the petition, in a sentence written as if it were proof of love, Melissa wrote that she feared I would make irrational changes to my estate plan under the influence of outsiders. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after the deputy left. The coffee in my mug went cold. Then I called Martin Hastings. He told me to come in immediately. When I reached his office, he had already read the petition. His assistant brought me tea, but I could not lift the cup. "Can she do this?" I asked. "She can file a petition," he said. "That does not mean she can prove it. She listed Daniel as someone who supports her. Then we will need to learn what Daniel actually knows." I looked down at the pages. "She wants to control where I live." "Yes." "She wants access to my accounts." "Yes." "And she thinks I am going to change my will, Mr." Hastings leaned back in his chair. "Have you?" "No." "Do you intend to?" I thought of Melissa standing on my porch, telling me I was slipping. I thought of her asking about my safe deposit box. I thought of the banknote about court planning. Then I looked at the framed photograph on Mr. Hastings's shelf, where William and I stood beside the closing documents for our house, younger and tired and proud. "I do not know yet," I said, "but I intend to make that decision myself." Mr. Hastings nodded. "That is exactly what we are going to protect." Before I left, he placed a legal pad in front of me. "From today forward, write everything down, every call, every visit, every message, dates, times, and exact words when you can remember them." I held the pad against my chest. "What if she convinces the judge?" "Then we answer with facts," he said. "Not anger, not panic. Facts." That evening, I began my record. At 6:14 p.m., Melissa called. I did not answer at 6:19 p.m. She left a voicemail saying, "Mom, please stop making this harder than it needs to be." At 6:27 p.m., Daniel sent a text. "Mom, Melissa says you got the court papers. Please don't overreact." I stared at that word for a long time. Overreact. As though someone had spilled coffee on a rug. As though my daughter had not just asked a court to take away my home, my money, and my voice. Then another message appeared. It was from Daniel again. I didn't know she was filing this already. My heart began to pound. Before I could answer, a second text came through. "Please don't tell her I said that." I looked at the glowing screen in my hand. For the first time since the petition arrived, I felt something other than fear. I felt the first small edge of the truth beginning to lift. The next morning, I called Daniel before Melissa could speak to him again. He answered on the fourth ring. "Mom?" "I received your messages," I said. There was a long silence. "I shouldn't have texted that," he finally said. "No," I told him. "You should not have known your sister planned to file a petition against me and said nothing." His breath caught. "I didn't know everything." "Then tell me what you did know." He did not answer right away. I could hear traffic in the background. He must have been sitting in his car outside his office. "Melissa said you were making reckless decisions," he said at last. "She said you were talking about changing your will and that some woman at church was putting ideas in your head." "Mrs. Hanley?" "I don't know. She said there were people taking advantage of you." "Did she tell you I had asked a lawyer to review my papers?" "No." "Did she tell you she called my bank and asked about my accounts?" Another silence. "No." "Did she tell you she had canceled one of my physical therapy appointments?" "No." His voice had gone quiet now, smaller. "She told me you were forgetting things, Mom." "I forget where I put my reading glasses sometimes," I said. "I do not forget who I am." "I know." "Do you?" That question hurt him. I could hear it in the way he exhaled. "I should have come to you," he said. "I should have asked." "Yes," I said. "You should have." He asked whether I wanted him to withdraw his support from the petition. I told him I wanted the truth. "That is all I have asked for from anyone," I said. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel said, "Melissa asked me to sign a statement 2 weeks ago." My fingers tightened around the phone. "What kind of statement?" "She wrote it. It said you forgot to pay your electric bill, and you called me in the middle of the night because you thought someone had taken your car." "Did you sign it?" "No." His voice was immediate. I told her I didn't remember any of that happening, because it did not happen. I know. She wrote down things that never happened, Daniel. I know. This time, I believed he did. He told me he still had the document in the center console of his car. He had not thrown it away because something about it had made him uncomfortable. Lissa had become angry when he refused to sign, then told him he was too weak to do what had to be done. That was Melissa's way. If someone would not follow her, she did not question herself. She questioned their strength. Please bring it to Mr. Hastings, I said. Will you be there? Yes. I'll come after work. When I hung up, I sat in the same kitchen chair where I had once helped Daniel with his spelling homework. He had been 8 years old then, with a cowlick that never stayed down and a habit of chewing the eraser end of his pencil whenever he was worried. I remembered telling him that mistakes could be fixed if he told the truth. I hoped that was still true. At 4 o'clock, Daniel arrived at Martin Hastings' office with a wrinkled envelope in his hand. He looked exhausted, Mr. Hastings led us into the conference room and closed the door. Daniel placed the envelope on the table but did not sit down. I'm sorry, he said to me. I looked at him. I'm not ready to tell you it's all right, I said. But I am ready to listen. He nodded, then pulled out the statement. It was exactly as he described. Melissa had written that I failed to pay my electric bill for 3 months. She claimed I had called Daniel at 2:13 in the morning because I believed a stranger had stolen my Buick. She said I had forgotten the name of my physician and accused my neighbor of manipulating me into hostile behavior. At the bottom was a space for Daniel's signature. He had never signed it. Mr. Hastings read every line, then placed the page beside the guardianship petition. The language is similar, he said. What does that mean? Daniel asked. It means your sister may have prepared this as supporting evidence for her filing. If the events are false, that is very serious. Daniel looked pale. She told me it was just so the court would understand Mom needs help. Mr. Hastings looked at him steadily. Courts do not need stories, they need facts. I saw Daniel swallow. Then Mr. Hastings asked him to describe everything Melissa had told him about me over the past several months. Daniel spoke slowly at first, embarrassed by the details. But as he continued, a pattern became clear. Melissa had told him I was losing track of bills. She had told him I had misplaced the deed to my house. She had told him I had given money away to strangers. She had told him I had been discussing changes to my will with unreliable people. She had told him I might sell the house without consulting the family. Did you ever see proof of any of this? Mr. Hastings asked. Daniel shook his head. No, I thought she had it. Did she ever tell you why she was so concerned about the will? Daniel looked at me, then down at the table. She said you were considering leaving more to charity. I had to sit back in my chair. I never said that to Melissa. He looked up. You didn't? No. I did tell Mr. Hastings I wanted to review my estate plan after your father died. That is not the same thing. Daniel rubbed a hand over his face. She said you were going to leave us with nothing. I have never threatened to leave either of my children with nothing, I said. But I have always believed what your father believed. An inheritance is a gift, not a leash. The room grew quiet. William used to say that often. He believed parents should help their children stand on their own feet, not spend their lives making themselves smaller to keep those children pleased. Melissa had heard him say it too. Maybe that was why she feared I might remember it. The next week, Mr. Hastings filed a response to Melissa's petition. He requested an independent capacity evaluation and asked the court to require Melissa to provide the records she claimed proved I could not manage my life. He also sent a formal notice instructing her not to contact my bank, doctor, or financial institutions on my behalf. Melissa called me the same evening. I almost let it go to voicemail, then I answered. What have you done? She demanded. Her voice was sharper than I had ever heard it. I hired an attorney. You're making yourself look worse. I am defending myself. You're humiliating me. I closed my eyes. You filed papers asking strangers to take control of my home and money. You listed false things about me. And now you are worried about being humiliated? You don't understand how this works. Then explain it to me. She was quiet. You are angry because Dad died, she said finally. You've been unstable since then. Do not use your father's death as a reason to take my choices away from me. I'm trying to save you from yourself. No, I said. You are trying to make my life easier for you to control. Her breathing changed. Then she said something that made the skin along my arms rise. You should have just let me help you, Mom. The call ended. For the next several days, I barely left the house except for appointments. Not because I was afraid to be seen, but because I had begun to understand how carefully Melissa had built her story. Every time I became upset, she could call me emotional. Every time I asked a question, she could call me suspicious. Every time I set a boundary, she could call me hostile. She had created a trap where the normal act of defending myself could be used as evidence against me. So I did what Mr. Hastings advised. I stayed calm, I kept records, and I let facts speak where anger could not. The independent evaluation was scheduled at a geriatric clinic in the next county. I drove myself there, though Mrs. Hanley offered to come with me. I appreciated her kindness, but I wanted to walk in on my own. The doctor conducting the evaluation was named Dr. Eleanor Price. She was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s with rimless glasses and a wall full of framed certificates behind her desk. She did not treat me like a problem to be solved. She asked about my life. She asked what medications I took and why. She asked me to describe my finances, my routines, and what I would do if I needed help with a task. I told her the truth. I ask for help when help is needed, I said. I just do not believe needing help with one thing means handing over every other thing. She wrote something down. She asked me the name of the president, the date, the county where I lived, and the amount of my monthly utility payments. Then she asked me why Melissa wanted guardianship. That is not for me to say, I replied. But I believe she wants control of my home and my estate planning. Why do you believe that? Because she has asked about both. Because she called my bank about guardianship access. Because she filed a petition claiming I was changing my will irrationally when I had only discussed reviewing it with my attorney. Dr. Price looked at me for a long moment. Do you feel safe at home? Yes. Do you feel pressured by your daughter? Yes. Are you afraid of her? I considered the question. I am afraid of what she may try to do, but I am not afraid to tell the truth. When the evaluation ended, Dr. Price told me the report would be sent directly to the court and to both attorneys. I asked her if I had done all right. She gave me a small smile. Mrs. Clark, this was not a test you could pass or fail. It was an assessment of whether you understand your life and can make your own decisions. And you understand your life very clearly. I drove home with tears in my eyes. Not because I had been praised, because I had needed a stranger to confirm something my own daughter had tried to erase. 2 days later, the court-appointed visitor came to my house. Her name was Miss Carver, and she explained that her role was to observe my living situation and speak to people who knew me. She walked through the house with a clipboard, but she did not inspect it in the way Melissa had. She asked questions. Did I prepare my own meals? Yes. Did I manage my medications? Yes. Could I describe my income and monthly expenses? Yes. Did I know where my important documents were? Yes. Was I isolated? No. I showed her the calendar on my refrigerator, my bill folder, the neatly labeled containers in my pantry, and the garden outside where my tomato plants had begun to climb their stakes. I also showed her the notebook where I had documented as Melissa's calls and visits. Miss Carver read several entries. Then she looked up at me. Have you felt pressured to move out of this home? Yes. Has your daughter suggested specific living arrangements? She brought brochures for an assisted living facility. Have you expressed a desire to remain here? Repeatedly. She wrote for a while. Before she left, she asked whether there was anyone else she could speak to. I gave her Mrs. Hanley's name. I gave her Dr. Patel's office number. I gave her the name of the librarian who ran our Tuesday reading circle. I even gave her the number of the woman at the hardware store who had helped me choose a new faucet washer after I fixed the kitchen sink myself. I did not do it to prove I was extraordinary. I did it because Melissa had tried to turn an ordinary, capable life into a list of failures, and ordinary people had seen me living it. That Friday, Daniel came by with a box of old photographs. I found these in Dad's storage cabinet, he said. He looked uncomfortable standing in the doorway. Why did you bring them? I thought you might want them. Melissa said she was going through things after Dad died, but I don't think she ever gave you all of this. Inside the box were family pictures, old birthday cards, and a manila envelope with William's handwriting on the front. Rebecca. Estate Planning's notes. My heart stopped for a moment. I carried the envelope to the dining room table and opened it carefully. Inside were notes William had made during our last meeting with Mr. Hastings. Nothing dramatic, nothing secret, just his clear, steady handwriting. If Rebecca survives me, the house remains hers completely. No child should pressure her to leave before she chooses. I read the sentence 3 times. Daniel stood across from me, looking at the floor. Did Melissa know about this? I asked. He nodded once. She found the envelope when she was helping Dad organize his files. I remember her reading it. That answer explained more than I wanted it to. Melissa had known exactly what William wanted. She had known the house was mine. She had known we believed my independence mattered. And still, she had gone to court and told a judge I could no longer decide where I belonged. Did she take anything else from Dad's files? I asked. Daniel looked uneasy. I don't know. But she had his old phone for a while. His phone? She said she needed to save the pictures before she traded it in. William had died nearly 2 years earlier. His phone should have been in the box with the rest of his belongings. Instead, Melissa had kept it. That night, I called Mr. Hastings and told him about the envelope and the phone. He was silent for a moment. Rebecca, he said, did your husband ever text you about estate planning? Yes, not often, but sometimes when he was at work and I was at the library. Then the phone may contain messages that establish his intentions. It may also show whether Melissa had access to information she claimed not to know. The following Monday, Mr. Hastings requested that Melissa preserve all communications and records relevant to the guardianship case. Her attorney responded that she had nothing to hide. But 3 days later, Daniel called me after midnight. His voice was shaking. Mom, I need to show you something. What happened? I was at Melissa's house. She left her phone on the counter when she sat upstairs. Daniel, you should not be looking through your sister's phone. I know. I didn't mean to. A message popped up while I was standing there. What message? He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, it was from Melissa to her friend Tara. My hand closed around the receiver. What did it say? Daniel swallowed. She wrote that once the guardianship goes through, she can finally get you out of that house before you change your will. The room around me seemed to disappear. I could hear only the clock in my hallway. Tick, tick, tick. Did you see anything else? I asked. Yes, his voice broke. She said you were too stubborn to understand that the house is wasted on one old woman. I looked toward the dark outline of my front window. Beyond it was the maple tree William had planted. Beyond it was the porch he built with his own hands. And somewhere in the darkness, my daughter was telling people that my home was wasted on me. Daniel, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, do not send me anything tonight. Do not touch her phone. Just come to Mr. Hastings' office in the morning. What are you going to do? I looked down at William's note on the table. No child should pressure her to leave before she chooses. I am going to make sure the court sees why Melissa wants to be my guardian. The hearing was scheduled for a gray Tuesday morning in early November. I woke before my alarm, though I had barely slept. For several minutes, I lay still beneath the quilt William's mother had made us when we married, listening to rain tap softly against the bedroom window. I thought about all the mornings I had woken in that room beside my husband. Mornings when our children were small, and the house was loud before sunrise. Mornings when William left early for work and kissed my forehead on his way out. Mornings after hard years, when money was short, and we promised each other we would keep going. That morning was different. That morning, I was preparing to sit in a courtroom while my own daughter tried to tell strangers that I was no longer fit to belong in my own life. I got dressed slowly. I wore my navy blue dress, the one with the plain collar and long sleeves. William always said it made me look official. I put on the small gold pendant he gave me for our 25th anniversary, then stood in front of the mirror. I did not look powerful. I looked like what I was. A 68-year-old widow who had spent most of her life taking care of other people. But I had learned something over the past month. You do not have to look powerful to tell the truth. At 9 o'clock, Daniel pulled into my driveway. He stood on the porch with his hands in his coat pockets. He had not shaved, and there were deep shadows under his eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "You ready?" "No," I told him, "but I am going." He nodded. "I'll be beside you." I looked at my son. He had failed me when it first mattered. There was no use pretending otherwise. But he had come forward when the truth became impossible to ignore. That did not erase the hurt. It did not restore the days I spent doubting myself because he chose silence. Still, I believed people should be judged not only by the moment they fail, but by what they do after they understand the damage. So I took my coat, locked my front door, and walked with him to the car. The probate courtroom was smaller than I expected. There were wooden benches along the back wall, a long table for each side, and a seal of the county behind the judge's bench. The room smelled faintly of old paper and floor polish. Melissa was already there. She sat beside her attorney in a cream-colored suit, her hair neat, her hands folded carefully on top of a leather folder. When she saw me enter with Daniel, her eyes moved to him first. Her expression changed, not dramatically. Melissa never gave people the satisfaction of a dramatic reaction, but the smile she wore disappeared. She leaned toward her attorney and whispered something. Daniel did not look at her. Mr. Hastings placed a hand lightly on my shoulder as we reached our table. "Remember," he said, "you do not need to prove you are perfect. You need only show that you understand your life, your choices, and your rights." I sat down. Across the room, Melissa looked at me with that same expression she had worn on the day she brought the guardianship pamphlets to my dining room table. Concern, sorrow, the practiced face of a daughter trying to save her mother. For one painful second, I saw the little girl she had once been. The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The girl who held my hand at William's funeral and whispered that we would take care of each other. Then she looked away. The bailiff called the case. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Judge Lillian Monroe was a woman with a calm, direct face and silver hair cut close to her head. She did not rush. She reviewed the file in front of her before looking toward Melissa's attorney. "Counsel," she said, "your client seeks guardianship over both the person and estate of Mrs. Rebecca Clark?" "Yes, Your Honor. And the requested authority would include decisions relating to housing, finances, health care, and property." "Yes." Judge Monroe turned her eyes toward me. "Mrs. Clark, do you understand what your daughter is asking this court to do?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "She is asking the court to appoint her to make decisions about where I live, how my money is managed, what medical care I receive, and what happens to my property." "And do you oppose that request?" "I do." The judge nodded once. "Very well. We will hear the evidence." Melissa's attorney began with the petition. He spoke in a smooth voice about my age, my grief after William died, and Melissa's concern for my welfare. He said I had become forgetful, isolated, suspicious, and vulnerable to outside influence. Then he called Melissa to testify. My daughter walked to the witness stand without looking at me. She raised her right hand and promised to tell the truth. I watched her sit down. For a moment, I felt nothing at all. Then she began to speak. "My mother has always been independent," she said. "But after my father passed, things changed." Her voice trembled in the right places. She stopped trusting people. She became confused about bills. She missed appointments. She accused me of going through her things when I was only trying to help. Melissa dabbed her eye with a tissue. "I am not trying to take anything from her. I only want her safe." Her attorney asked whether I had become angry when she suggested additional help. "Yes," Melissa said. "She became very hostile. Did she tell you she wanted to make changes to her will?" "She said she was considering it." "Did you believe those decisions were rational?" "No," Melissa said. "I thought she was being influenced by people who did not have her best interests at heart." Her attorney looked toward the judge. "Mrs. Clark's daughter is not here out of greed, Your Honor. She is here because she loves her mother and fears what may happen if no one steps in." Melissa looked down. If I had not known what she had done, I might have believed her. That was the hardest part. She was good at making false concern look like love. Then Mr. Hastings stood. "Mrs. Clark," he said, "you told the court you are concerned for your mother's safety. Let us begin with the bills you claim she failed to pay." "Yes. Can you provide the unpaid electric bills?" Melissa hesitated. "I do not have them with me. Did you ever personally see an electric bill that was overdue? I was told about it. By whom? I do not remember. Mr. Hastings walked to the evidence table and lifted a folder. Your Honor, we have certified billing records from the utility company. They show Mrs. Clark's account remained current every month. Melissa's attorney objected briefly, but the judge admitted the documents. Mr. Hastings placed one page in front of Melissa. Does this refresh your memory? She looked down. I may have been mistaken about the exact bill. The exact bill? Mr. Hastings repeated. Mrs. Clark has had no unpaid electric bill. Not one. Is that correct? Melissa's lips pressed together. I guess so. Let us move to the alleged missed appointments. Did you state in your petition that Mrs. Clark missed multiple physical therapy appointments? Yes. Do you know that the clinic records show one appointment was canceled by a caller identifying herself as Melissa Clark? Melissa's face went still. I was trying to help her reschedule. Did you reschedule it? I intended to. Did you? No. Did you tell your mother you canceled the appointment? I thought she knew. Mr. Hastings paused. You thought she knew you had canceled medical care in her name? I was worried she was tired. You were worried she was tired, he said quietly. So you made a medical decision for her without her consent? Melissa looked toward her attorney. The courtroom had become very quiet. Judge Monroe made a note. Mr. Hastings continued. Did you contact Mrs. Clark's bank? I called to ask general questions. Did you identify yourself as her daughter? Yes. Did you ask what would be required for guardianship access to her accounts? I was planning ahead in case she needed help. Before you filed this petition, did you have any medical finding that Mrs. Clark could not manage her financial affairs? No. Did you have any court order authorizing you to inquire into her accounts? No. Did you have her permission? Melissa looked at me then. No. The word was almost too quiet to hear. But everyone heard it. Mr. Hastings returned to our table and picked up another folder. Your Honor, we also have the court visitor's report, the independent capacity evaluation from Dr. Eleanor Price, and a statement from Mrs. Clark's treating physician. Melissa's attorney stood. Objection. The evaluation is only one assessment. Judge Monroe looked down at the document. Overruled. The report is directly relevant. She read several pages in silence. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Clark, Dr. Price reports that you understand your finances, medications, health conditions, residence, legal rights, and estate planning options. She found no evidence that you lack the capacity to make your own decisions. Yes, Your Honor, I said. Judge Monroe turned to Melissa. Ms. Clark, do you have a medical professional who has evaluated your mother and reached a different conclusion? Melissa's attorney answered for her. No, Your Honor. No physician, no psychologist, no geriatric specialist. Correct? That is correct. The judge folded her hands. Then the petition rests heavily on your client's personal observations. Melissa's attorney nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hastings stood again. Your Honor, there is one additional matter that explains why those observations were made. I felt Daniel shift beside me. Across the room, Melissa's face changed. For the first time that morning, she looked frightened. Her attorney turned toward her. Melissa? He whispered. Mr. Hastings lifted a packet of printed pages. During discovery, Ms. Clark produced text messages from her phone. We have authenticated copies from her mobile carrier and a sworn declaration from the custodian of records. Melissa's attorney rose quickly. Your Honor, we object to the introduction of private communications without proper context. The messages were produced under court order, Mr. Hastings said. They were sent by the petitioner and concern the stated purpose of this guardianship request. Judge Monroe looked at the packet. I will review them. Mr. Hastings handed copies to the judge, Melissa's attorney, and the court clerk. Then he spoke slowly. On September 18, 11 days before this petition was filed, Melissa Clark sent a message to her friend Tara Boone. She wrote, Once guardianship is approved, I can finally get Mom out of that house before she changes her will again. There was a sound from the benches behind us. A sharp inhale. Melissa's attorney looked at her. Is that accurate? He asked. Melissa did not answer. Mr. Hastings continued. 2 minutes later, she wrote, Daniel is soft, but he'll back me if I make it sound like Mom is slipping. Daniel's shoulders dropped. I reached beneath the table and took his hand. He gripped mine tightly. Mr. Hastings read the next message. On September 25, Melissa Clark wrote to her brother Daniel, "Don't tell Mom the point is the house. If she thinks this is about money, she'll get stubborn and change everything." The judge raised her eyes from the page. "Mrs. Clark," she said, "did you send these messages?" Melissa's face had lost all color. "I was frustrated," she said. "That was not my question." Melissa's attorney leaned toward her, but she was looking only at the judge now. "Yes," she said. Judge Monroe's expression did not change. "You referred to your mother's home as wasted on one old woman. Did you send that message as well?" Melissa closed her eyes. "Yes." The silence that followed felt heavier than any shouting could have. I looked at my daughter and waited for an apology. None came. Instead, Melissa shook her head. "You don't understand," she said. Judge Monroe's voice remained calm. "Then help me understand." Melissa looked at me. There were tears in her eyes now, but they were different from the ones she had shown earlier. These were not tears arranged for an audience. These were angry tears. "Dad wanted that house to stay in the family," she said. "Mom lives there alone. She barely uses half of it. Daniel and I both have children. We have expenses. She acts like none of us matter." I felt a deep ache in my chest, not because her words were true, because I finally understood how long she had been carrying them. "Melissa," I said softly. She looked at me. "You were never entitled to my home because you wanted it." Her mouth trembled. "You have no idea how hard things have been for me." "I know you have struggled," I said. "I have helped you when I could. Your father and I paid your tuition. We helped with your first apartment. We helped after your divorce. I would have listened if you had asked for help again. I shouldn't have to ask." "No," I said. "You should not have to beg. But you do have to be honest." Her eyes filled. "You were going to leave us out." "I was going to review my will," I said, "because I had the right to review it. I had not made a single change." Mr. Hastings placed William's handwritten note into evidence. Judge Monroe read it carefully. Then she looked at Melissa. "Your father wrote that his wife should remain in the home unless and until she chose otherwise. You were aware of this?" Melissa said nothing. "Were you aware?" "Yes." "And despite that, you sought guardianship authority that would allow you to determine where your mother lived?" "Yes." The judge leaned back. "Miss Clark, concern for a parent can be genuine. But the law requires more than concern. It requires evidence that a person cannot make safe and informed decisions for herself." She looked toward the stack of documents. "Here, the evidence shows Mrs. Clark manages her finances, understands her health care, maintains her home, and has an active support network. It also shows that several claims in the petition were unsupported or false." Melissa's attorney lowered his eyes. Judge Monroe continued. "The text messages strongly suggest that this petition was motivated, at least in part, by a desire to control Mrs. Clark's house and estate decisions." Melissa began to cry. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired. Tired in the way only a mother can feel when she sees the truth about her child and knows there is no going back to the version of love she once believed they had. Judge Monroe denied the petition for guardianship. She ordered that Melissa have no access to my financial or medical information without my express written consent. She also referred the matter of the false statements in the petition to the court's investigator for further review. The judge made no promise about what might happen next, neither did Mr. Hastings. That was not how real justice worked. It did not always arrive in a single dramatic sentence. Sometimes it came as a court order, a written record, a door that could no longer be opened by lies. When the hearing ended, Melissa stood near the courtroom door while people filed out. Daniel went to speak to her. I stayed where I was. I watched my son say something I could not hear. Melissa shook her head. Then she looked across the room at me. For a moment, I thought she might come over. She did not. She walked out of the courthouse alone. Daniel returned to me with tears in his eyes. "She says she needs time," he said. "So do I." He nodded. "I'm sorry, Mom." I looked at him carefully. "I believe you are sorry," I said. "But sorry is where the work begins. It is not where it ends." He wiped his face. "I know. In the weeks after the hearing, I made changes. Not because Melissa had proven I could not manage my life. Because she had taught me I needed to protect it. Mr. Hastings helped me update my estate plan. I named an independent professional fiduciary as the person who could step in if I was ever truly unable to make decisions. I made certain that no one person in the family could control my home, finances, and medical care alone. I also created a written healthcare plan with Dr. Patel, including my preferences and the names of people I trusted to be informed in an emergency. Daniel was not excluded from my life, but he was no longer allowed to stand quietly beside a lie and call it love. As for Melissa, I sent her a letter through Mr. Hastings. I told her I loved her. That was true, no matter how painful it was. But I also told her she could not come to my home without an invitation. She could not contact my bank, doctor, attorney, or insurance company on my behalf. And she could not return to my life by pretending the court case had been a misunderstanding. If she wanted a relationship with me, it would have to begin with the truth. Not excuses. Not tears. Not another performance of concern. The first Thanksgiving after the hearing, Daniel came with his boys. We cooked together in my kitchen. He burned the rolls because he set the timer wrong, and the children laughed so hard that one of them nearly dropped the mashed potatoes. For the first time in months, my house sounded like a home again. After dinner, I walked out to the porch alone. The maple tree had lost most of its leaves. The air smelled like rain and cold earth. I looked through the front window and saw Daniel helping his youngest son button his coat. William used to say that a house was not protected by its locks. It was protected by the people who respected the life built inside it. I had spent too long believing that keeping peace meant making room for anyone who carried my name. Now I understood something different. Love without respect becomes control. Concern without proof becomes a weapon. And forgiveness, if it ever comes, does not mean handing someone the keys to hurt you again. My home was still mine. My voice was still mine. And from that day forward, no one, not even my own daughter, would get to decide otherwise. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories about family truth, dignity, and lawful justice, and leave a comment. What boundary would you put in writing to protect your independence?